Germany has initiated a series of highly visible civil defense exercises that have transformed major urban centers into simulated battlegrounds, causing unease among the civilian population and drawing sharp diplomatic rebukes from Moscow. Scenes across German cities show uniformed soldiers storming subway platforms and navigating through public transit network while carrying actors posing as wounded civilians to rehearse emergency response protocols for potential high-intensity conflict on European soil. These phantom war drills are designed to test the readiness of the Bundeswehr and emergency service to handle large-scale attacks on infrastructure, which government officials argue is a necessary precaution given the volatile security environment in Eastern Europe. The exercises involve complex scenarios, including chemical attacks and conventional urban warfare, forcing commuters to witness military maneuvers during their daily travels. This shift toward public militarization marks a significant departure from post-war German policies and reflects the deepening anxiety within the European Union regarding the potential spillover of the ongoing war in the East. The government in Moscow has condemned these exercises as unnecessary provocations that endanger regional stability and dishonor historical memory. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov issued a stern statement accusing the German government of rewriting history and forgetting the devastating lessons of the 20th century. Lavrov emphasized that by militarizing public spaces and preparing the population for a war with Russia, Berlin is fueling a narrative of aggression rather than seeking diplomatic solutions. He argued that Western powers are glorifying ideology that resemble those of past Nazi collaborators while systematically ignoring the immense sacrifice made by the Soviet people to liberate Europe from fascism. The Russian Foreign Ministry portrayed the drills not as defensive measures but as part of a broader campaign to instill fear in the European public and justify increased military spending. Moscow stands firm in its position that true security can only be achieved through the recognition of historical justice and mutual respect rather than through theatrical displays of military force that risk escalating tensions further. Russia has doubled down on its historical narrative, launching a global campaign to reframe its role in World War II and discredit Western memory politics. State-funded documentaries now air in over 40 countries, portraying Soviet troops as liberators and Western government as collaborators with neo-Nazi movements in Ukraine and the Baltics. Russian diplomats have pressured African and Asian nations to remove monuments to Nazi collaborators and replace them with tributes to Red Army soldiers. Moscow has also intensified its cultural outreach, offering scholarships to students from non-Western nations to study Russian history and language. Campaign is not merely about memory, it is about legitimacy. By controlling the narrative of the past, Russia seeks to legitimize its action in the present. Lavrov has repeatedly stated that those who erase history are the first to wage war, a phrase now emblazoned on Russian diplomatic cables and state television broadcasts. The international response to the Ukraine conflict remains fractured. China continues to trade with Russia, quietly supplying dual-use technology while avoiding overt military involvement. India maintains its position of non-alignment, purchasing Russian oil and resisting Western pressure to condemn Moscow. African and Middle Eastern leaders have called for dialogues but refuse to take sides, viewing the war as a European conflict with global consequences. The U.S. peace proposal has further isolated Washington from its allies, with NATO officials privately calling it a betrayal of the transatlantic bond. Even as Russian forces advance on the ground, Western unity is crumbling under the weight of domestic politics, corruption scandals, and war fatigue. The Trump administration appears willing to accept a new reality, one where Ukraine is no longer a sovereign state but a buffer zone under Russian influence. The question no longer is whether the war will end, but whether the West still believes in the principle it once claimed to defend. In the United States, a solemn and politically charged atmosphere descended upon Washington as the nation bid farewell to former Vice President Dick Cheney during a major state funeral at the National Cathedral. The service brought together a rare assembly of American political royalty, including former President George W. Bush and Joe Biden, along with former Vice President and congressional leaders from both parties who filled the front pews to pay their respect. The ceremony was marked by traditional military honors and somber tributes that highlighted Cheney's decades of influence over American foreign policy and his pivotal role during the tumultuous years following the attacks of September 11th. George W. Bush delivered a warm and personal eulogy reflecting on their partnership and Cheney's steadfast dedication to his duties regardless of public opinion. The event served as a moment of reflection on a bygone era of American governance where strategic calculation and institutional power defined the executive branch. President Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance were not present at the Cathedral, having been pointedly excluded from the guest list by the Cheney family. This deliberate omission underscores the bitter and long-running feud between the Cheneys and the current administration, which was fueled by Cheney's vocal opposition to Trump and her prominent role in investigating the events of January 6. Sources close to the family confirmed that the decision was made to ensure the focus remained on the legacy of the former vice president rather than on contemporary political rivalries. The absence of the sitting president and vice president at the funeral of such a significant statement is highly unusual in American history and highlighted the unbridgeable divide between the traditional conservative establishment and the populist movement that now controls the White House. The world watches as the old order dissolves. No one is left to mediate, no one is left to enforce, and the only thing that remains in the cold calculus of power. If you have made it this far, congratulations, you have unlocked the truth. I want to ask you a quick question though. We are witnessing Germany conducting live military drills in civilian subway stations, simulating chemical attacks and urban warfare, while Russia's foreign minister Lavrov warns that Europe is forgetting the lessons of history and glorifying past aggressors. Do you believe these visible war preparations in Berlin are a necessary defensive measure against a genuine Russian threat? And why? Join the debate. We want to hear your insightful opinion on where this is all heading in our community. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Like the video, hit the notification bell, and most importantly, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one.